Recently I poked my head into the Cacowards website and I saw that Skillsaw had made a new WAD for Doom 2. And man, you know I gotta get the new Skillsaw WAD. So I did, and I played it, and then I thought, shit man, there's so much Doom modding out there these days, I'm gonna play every single one of these Cacowards winners, gold and silver. Today I'm gonna talk about them, no fucking around. This is 24 Doom WAD reviews from your favorite Doom WAD reviewer, Hyderomastgroningem. Let's go everyone, I'm gonna review. Arrival makes a wonderful first impression with this explosive sequence that sets the tone for the whole WAD and introduces its main gimmick, which is fuck tons of hit scans that you can effortlessly rip through. It's a very traditional kind of Doom WAD, and besides the hit scan thing, I can't really identify any special or unique design ideas in Arrival. So I'll start by talking about the hit scan thing. Anyone who plays Doom will know that hit scans are obnoxious and painful to fight when used in the wrong way, but can also be absolute pushovers depending on the situation. Arrival goes for a lot of the latter and also an uncomfortable amount of the former. The amount of enemies is often overwhelming in a bad way. It's not a slaughter WAD, but the monster counts make it feel like it is. Here's all the weapons, here's all the enemies, go do gaming. There's one moment in particular that I really love, when you get this U-shaped arena with an island in the middle occupied by two cyber demons. You hit the switch, kill the enemies, and then this crusher slowly chips away at the cyber demon's health. Like really slowly, and I'm gonna have to speed this up for you so that you don't have to experience Pavira brand Doom gaming like I did.
He's still there. He's still there, still.
That's right, Tentacruel. He is still there.
This game's so boring, dude. You'll fall asleep playing this game.
That's right, Stiggs. This game is boring. I am going to fall asleep. And there they go. Now I get the red key, which opens the door to the room that has the blue key. And this is a really common feeling when you play Arrival. This feeling of, why when I start Map 05 do I get put in this ugly room with an elevator I can't use? Why do I have to go up the staircase to push the button that allows me to push the button to use the elevator? Why are these health bonuses on the right side of the room instead of in the middle? Why do I have to fight these revenants right now? Why are there so many paths in this level that I dread playing? And the other common feeling when you play Arrival is pain, especially when you die and realize that you have to
do it all over again. I would do it all over again. I'd do it 15 times.
I did do it all over again, so many times, and it was not good.
My reputation is too high.
From what I can tell, the point of Fractured Worlds is to push the limits of encounter design in modern classic Doom. It's a slaughter WAD. I'm usually not too into slaughter gameplay, but Fractured Worlds makes it really compelling by focusing on the puzzle solving aspect of it and really paying attention to the tiny details of each fight. For example, let's say you find yourself in this room. These Hell Knights over here are on these bleachers, and as they walk towards you they fall into a teleporter which puts them at the back of the room. 4 cyber demons wander around the room and your job is to find out how the hell you're gonna stay alive for long enough to get into the 4 little tunnels at the sides of the room so you can start pushing the buttons. It's about finding and making space, controlling infighting, and just straight trial and error. There are some non-slaughter moments in the WAD, including the whole first map, where you're just thrown into this room and it's just an assault on the senses from all sides. I could go on for ages about how cleverly designed just this first room is. Every last spot is unsafe for a great reason, and it just engages your brain immediately. The gameplay in Fractured Worlds is completely vanilla except for the inclusion of the baby cyber demon, which is exactly the same as a regular cyber but with less health. It's marked by a teal color instead of the standard blue, but since they're both custom colors and so similar to each other, I didn't actually realize there were 2 types of cyber for a while, which got me owned a few times earlier on in the WAD. As you know by now, the visuals are incredible, and this quality is consistent from start to finish for every single room. There's a lot of variation in what exactly they use to decorate each room, but it's always good. My biggest complaint with this WAD is that the final fight on these hexagonal pillars is kind of easy and really underwhelming. I don't know why this happened, there's so much crazy and exciting stuff in this WAD, and then it just limps over the finish line with something that feels like it could have been in the second map. Haste is described in the Cacowards as challenge maps that could not only be finished in under 10 minutes apiece, but would also be approachable to players who don't necessarily live and breathe hardcore gameplay every waking moment of their bedeviled lives. And is described by the authors as 5 to 10 minute maps that could easily be beaten by less experienced players even on UV, which is a crock of shit because this is a nasty slaughter WAD that rivals Fractured Worlds in difficulty and far surpasses it in being obnoxious and a pain in the ass to get through. If this were honestly advertised as a tough as balls slaughter WAD from the beginning, then I wouldn't be upset about it, but I was really looking forward to something that was fast paced, hardcore, but still kind of easy. I don't know if the descriptions online are a joke or if Doom mappers are so out of touch with reality that this is what passes as approachable in their world. But to actually judge it as a slaughter WAD, it is okay. There's a good amount of nice fights, some parts really get the blood rushing, there's also a lot of faff and bullshit and cheap deaths and highly convoluted fights where you need to save scum and work out a path over several deaths, but not in a good or fun way like Fractured Worlds or Skill Soul WAD. It doesn't feel crafted so much as forced. One fight that really irritated me was this moment where you run down a corridor and pinkies start spawning in on both sides, so you game the bites, this is highly approachable gameplay, and make your way back to where you came from, and at this point I ran out of shotgun ammo in my first playthrough, so I ended up peppering them with pistol shots, and this is absolutely a nitpick and I'm really ratting on one fight here, but when I finished this I was overwhelmed with this unusual sensation of despair and boredom and thinking what the fuck just happened, whose idea was this fight, and I was not having a good time. There's a rule that Haste makes obvious early on, which is that before any slaughter fight you'll be given a bunch of items that give you all you need to take on the fight ahead of you. Usually it's a soul sphere, maybe a green armor, and just enough ammo to see you through. Of course if you had some extra saved up from before, then you'll have a bit of an advantage going into the fight. The great thing about this system is it allows you to freely save scum every fight without having to worry about making an impossible save, but unfortunately the authors break this rule when it matters most, which is towards the end of the last map, Sepia, which on HMP is probably a 30 to 50 minute affair for less experienced players like myself, who've cleared Valiant on UV, Pistol Start and Saveless, so fuck you. I saved just before this fight with a billion arch files up on this platform, where you have to battering ram your way through these revenants with a BFG, and the only spot you can possibly stand is right here behind this pillar, so you will take damage from the revenants, and basically the story goes that I didn't have enough ammo to push through the revenants, and rockets do not work here. But somehow, I did manage to cheese my way through and salvage the save, but with one less BFG shot, I think it wouldn't have been possible. Speaking of false advertising, here's Tarnsman's Projectile Hell, presented as the first ever Toho-themed Doom Megawad, when in reality it's just an augmented vanilla map set with modern design sensibilities and a girl character. There's an attempt at abstract humor and ridiculous character in the title screen and the story, but I feel like it falls flat and is totally disconnected to the actual game. It gets a little playful at times, but for the most part, this is just tuned up Doom. This WAD does do a very good job, however, of representing what good modern Doom feels like. It feels a lot like the Skill Soul Mega WADs, but with a slightly different flavor and a little bit less wow factor. In terms of gameplay changes, we have some cool new guns. I especially love the boring standard issue assault rifle, which meets the demand for a proper long range weapon. The weapon switch speed is faster, several of the enemies are faster, you can do high kicks, the shotgun is almost super, and vanilla guns drop and you can take the ammo from them, but you're not allowed to use them because they are sexist. Special mention to the excited Caco Demon, who is at least 10 times more fun to fight than the regular one, and also a little bit faster to kill in this WAD because the almost super shotgun is slightly better than the regular super shotgun. Visuals in Tarnsman's Projectile Hell are functional. The WAD has a kind of pseudo-minimalist visual design. It's pretty abstract, pretty doomy, a little bit skill-soy, but it still holds back from giving you, say, an abandoned mine or a huge temple or something grandiose like that. The levels are strictly in service of the gameplay first, touched up a little bit with some muted textures and then left alone. The result of Tarnsman putting all of his eggs in the gameplay basket is that the WAD is super duper fun. It's probably clear by now that what I like most is fast-paced, skillfully crafted linear levels, and Tarnsman delivers it in spades. The levels are usually nothing crazy or extreme, just a couple of good ideas fleshed out for 3 to 20 minutes and then you're on to the next one. I wasn't actually able to work out what I.H.N.I stands for, but this episode 1 of I.H.N.I delivers 3 maps of highly modernized GZ Doom gameplay. You have enormous guns that feel like they take up as much space on the screen as the fuel rod from Halo, and of course mouse look is encouraged, but surprisingly jumping and crouching are disabled. This sort of WAD has probably been done before, translating mostly vanilla Doom gameplay into a very highly decorated visual style. That's exactly what this is. The enemies are all the same except for the final boss, but the gameplay is a real curveball with the way that the author approaches environments and especially set pieces. With the exception of some of the more dramatic set piece events, most of this stuff could just as easily be done in a more traditional WAD, but you don't tend to see people trying it. Some of the vibes in here are more like Half-Life 1 than Doom, and I think it works wonderfully. It's a very fun WAD, full of surprises and gorgeous locations with only 1 or 2 hiccups along the way. As a quick example, there's this one outdoor area which is just a fucking massive open field with about 100 enemies dotted around the place, and it's so stupid and totally flies in the face of the character of this WAD. Normally you'd be walking on beams or crawling through a vent or something, and then you get this. That is bizarre. Intergalactic Xenology 2 is the sequel to the third-party spiritual successor to Ancient Aliens. Now, Ancient Aliens is awesome, so I was looking forward to this one, but unfortunately, it brings all of the aesthetic but none of the substance of the original. What I love most about skill-soy WADs is the extremely fine balance between player, enemy, and environment. Your movement and guns, the enemy's movement and guns, and what space and obstacles you're each given to work with. This fight with a Revenant and an Archvile in Ancient Aliens is a perfect example, but none of that brilliance is present in Intergalactic Xenology 2. You see the sprites and the textures, but you don't feel the fun. Frankly, it's not fun. The maps are boring, the encounters are clumsy and uninspired, like why would you put all of these Shadow Plasma dudes in this area at this point? Why would you put a bunch of Revenants on a wall that I can't get close to in this huge open space? It's kind of staggering how much less exciting these maps are than Ancient Aliens, and it goes to show that style and aesthetic and augmenting gameplay cannot carry a WAD. You need good level design to actually back it up. Sold Soul is the only Heretic WAD on this list, and I liked Heretic. I fondly remember playing it on my GXT S7800B, but I think this is my first time playing custom content for it. Sold Soul is almost completely vanilla. There is one custom weapon, but you don't get it until the very end, so for the most part it's just a bunch of normal, new levels for Heretic. They are gorgeous maps, very large, very sprawling, and I think perhaps a little bit too slow. One inherent difference between Heretic and Doom is that Heretic is a slower game with weaker guns and tankier, less threatening enemies. I think Sold Soul doesn't pay quite enough attention to this difference, especially in this map where the amount of serpents becomes annoying. It has a bit of its own character, but not that much. It's very Heretic, so if you like Heretic, definitely give it a shot, but if you're not, then perhaps don't bother. There's also a couple of bizarre design choices, like this ridiculous compulsory platforming section that I'm obviously just going to save scum. This map is like 30 minutes long. Why would you put a platforming section halfway through the map? That is so silly. Come on. I've always thought of Renard as the ultimate joke of indie music, but here they show that they are in fact capable of making a super cool Doom WAD. Who would have thought? It's brief and a bit all over the show, but Time Tripper is awesome. It's beautiful, it's fun, and best of all, it doesn't take itself seriously. It's presented with this aesthetic that's extremely colorful. It's like hard neon, Sega, bullet hell gaming plus anime plus ancient aliens, and it works a treat. Doom 64 guns add to the idiosyncratic vibes, and the rest is just ideas. Time Chipperoni has a few of them, but they're mostly great and they don't outstay their welcome. Case in point, this Archvile fight where you touch the button and then it spawns onto this conveyor belt and the wall in the middle starts going wavy, so you're like, oh shit, and you gotta run around and dodge the blast, but then the Archvile teleports to the conveyor on the other side and you have to go around to the other side and you probably got owned because you didn't work out what was going on in time. I love that. There's this bouncy ball weapon that just splits into a bazillion explosions and owns you. There's some fucking lame, pretentious poetry that Renard probably thinks is cool. And unfortunately, there are 2 levels titled Liminal Space where you have to pepper away at cunts on towers for like 10 minutes because the clear condition for this map is to kill everything. These Liminal Space maps seriously suck ass and they're the only stumbling blocks in what is otherwise an incredible WAD. Atmospheric Extinction is great, I like it. I think what really makes Atmospheric Extinction shine among all of these other crazy and wacky WADs is how it consistently gets the basics right. There are no mistakes or oversights in the level design and everything is so clean and so to the point and so much fun. If the game gives you a chain gun, there's a bunch of hit scans to mow down. If you get a rocket launcher, a bunch of imps to blast away. Berserk, piggies. If there's a bridge that's down, the switch is close by and very easy to find. And if there's a trap, you can easily identify the route to safety in a split second if you're paying attention. Everything is really clear to the player in this WAD, and you will not get confused or feel like the level did you wrong. I don't think you need me to tell you how good this looks unless you're the guy who chooses the screenshots for the Cacowards, in which case you definitely do. It's beautiful, all the maps are beautiful, and there are some cool gimmicks, and in between that is just good, clean Doom 2 gaming. A bit of easy stuff, a bit of hard stuff, even some light slaughter. More than any other WAD on this list, Atmospheric Extinction is a showcase of what makes vanilla modern Doom great. Can't be beat, and if you find Scrimmy, I'll give you a lollipop. Unhallowed is a beautiful single map WAD that kind of grinds my gears and crushes my balls. To illustrate what I don't like about this WAD, let's investigate the very beginning, which the Cacowards page describes like this. From the get-go, there is no time wasted showing the map's teeth, Cyano making smart use of vertical space and staircases to create a simple yet elegant encounter mixing imps and a single Archvile. If you thought to walk down the corridor at the back of this room instead of the corridor at the start of the room, you would find yourself in this optional area where you can get 4 rockets, a box of shells, and the Berserk. After you fight the Spectres and take the Berserk, you have the option to flip the switch, which spawns in a bunch of imps, and then the Archvile is here up the stairs. Baba boom, he's dead. Then you walk away from the imps because there is no more loot downstairs. I don't know how this gets interpreted as elegant. I cheesed this fight in this way by mistake the first time that I played Unhallowed, and the confusing design decisions carry on from there. These hit scans up on the wall instead of down on the ground, this bump at the back of the elevator that makes you go back down, the door that used to be open but inexplicably closes after you get all 3 keys and want to go back to the yellow door, this fight with Revenants where you're encouraged to retreat to the elevator and then all the Revenants get stuck in it, all these Cacodemons buzzing around outside immediately after a long slaughter section, and here we get to my other big gripe, which is that Unhallowed is the #1 worst offender for Cacodemon spam in the whole Cacowards. Really, I think that there should be some kind of Cacodemon themed award that they give out to people who commit this crime. Look at this. There's also a lot of this, and a little bit of this. To illustrate what I do like about Unhallowed, I would show you footage of any room in this map because the visuals are so good. They make excellent use of some very tasteful custom textures to create some of the most appealing environments in the Cacowards this year. And the slaughter sections are fine, they're not the best, not the worst, and there are a couple unique ideas mixed in that keep it entertaining. I would describe the gameplay in the first half as a trek through a series of small sanctums full of loot and keys and monsters, and the second half as a handful of massive slaughter rooms. And now that I've shown you the good stuff and the bad stuff, well, that's basically my summary of Unhallowed. Some good stuff and some bad stuff. I don't know about this one, man. Doom 2 in Spain only is a joke WAD, but it's like a diet joke because it is really hard to get to grips with what's funny about it. The idea is that it's presented as if it were a Spanish bootleg release of Doom 2 with silly translations of the map names and console messages and that sort of thing. And then on top of that, jokes related to these are woven into the maps themselves, but being a casual Doom player and a non-Spanish speaker, most of it went over my head. Some of the jokes are more obvious, like the Icon of Sin map. There's one community reference that I did understand when you died to a Revenant, and then there's one that was explained on the Cacowards page that I recognized when I got there. The map, The Inmost Dens, got mangled as Las Antros Más Íntimos, which apparently back translates as the most intimate clubs, and then you get this in the map itself. It's stuff like that. As for the actual game, it's super old school vanilla mapping, which sticks to design conventions old and or new for the most part. Even when jokes are included in the level design, it's not done at the expense of actual gameplay, which is nice, and especially in the first half of the WAD, I enjoyed the more chilled out and simple map designs. That said, I think that if you're not part of the target audience, I don't think there's much to see that you can't see elsewhere. The head author of the WAD is Tarnsman, who already snatched up another Cacaward with another Mega WAD in the same year, so what I'm thinking is, why not just go and play Tarnsman's Projectile hell instead of this? In the same line as Doom 2 in Spain only, this is an abstract and silly WAD that comes with a bunch of Doom community in-jokes that I don't really get. Reading the Cacowards description gives me a vague idea of what's going on, but as an outsider to the community, I can't really connect with all of that. The underlying idea here is to make bizarre, lo-fi locations full of strange ideas that bewilder you and make you question just how far your suspension of disbelief in id Tech 1 is gonna go, and then marry that idea with comfortable gameplay that doesn't confuse or irritate the player. It's probably tempting to make stupid joke levels full of hit scans and World War I trenches, or an endlessly repeating set of rooms filled with dozens of enemies of the same type, but thankfully that doesn't happen until the last two maps, and my recommendation is to skip them. It'll be an anticlimactic ending, but trust me, it's better than playing through this. Let me show you a clip of me playing one of the earlier oh my gosh, there was a Hell Knight behind that wall. You got me good. Unusually, I think where Down the Drain shoots itself in the foot is when it tries to be good. Halfway through the set, there's this tonal shift to more hellish landscapes, and you get the feeling that the WAD is trying to do away with the ridiculousness of the first half and engage you in something darker and cooler and doomier, but the substance just isn't there for the most part. There's one map on the fence between these two ideas, map 15, which is very creative and very fun and even quite difficult, still retaining the playful nonsense of the first half but with some real gameplay ideas behind it. Unfortunately, the magic doesn't really last, and then Down the Drain goes down the drain and becomes a bit of a slog in the toilet as you work your way out to the finish line, or at least until map 30. Infraworld Coma Moonlight is the sequel to Infraworld The Hate Hammer, which is another run around in circles looking for buttons single map WAD that I hated, but thankfully the sequel doesn't resemble the original in any noticeable way. To be honest, I have no idea what the connection between them is or why these maps both share the same title. I guess you search for a bunch of keys and then go to a final location, but that goes for most maps, so I don't know. I love the visual style of Coma Moonlight. It's really dramatic with lots of neon purple against a big black tower built into a stony mountain, and your job is to get to the top of the tower. It's a really fun journey. One refreshing twist to the gameplay here is that mouse look and jumping are both recommended. Jumping is compulsory. You even get these jump pads here and there that are a lot of fun, although it's very difficult to control your trajectory, so make sure to save scum them in case you fuck it up every single time. The fights in this level aren't anything incredible, but they are fun and they are well made, not too hard either. And what I find really weird about this one is that there is no fight at the end. When you take the 3 keys to the end of the map, it just finishes. But of course, the real beauty of this map is the journey that we all had along the way. And also it looks pretty good. There's not much conceptually to this WAD, but there is a lot in the way of effort and passion and details. And it is so much better than Hate Hammer, which I recommend you don't play. Deadly Standards 3 is another sequel WAD, but for this one I decided not to play the first two in the series. It's a Doom 1 WAD and it makes a great first impression with these very attractive custom enemy sprites and a lovely void hell kind of atmosphere. Caco spam is a problem in the early maps. With the super shotgun, Caco spam is annoying, but in a Doom 1 WAD it's just insulting. As I walk down this corridor, the wall opens to my left to reveal 3 Caco demons. There's plenty of space to move here, no other enemies, no pressure to move fast, plenty of ammo, just 3 dumb fucking asshole Caco demons that I have to kill before I get to keep playing the game. Since I have to backtrack through this corridor later, I can't just ignore them, I have to spend the time pumping shell after shell until they're all finally gone. As a collab WAD, there's some real variance in level design and gimmick ideas in DS3, like this broken room gimmick in map 2 that teleports you to the ceiling and back again. For the most part, the maps in this set deliver some cozy, good, sometimes clever, sometimes even great Doom 1 gameplay, but I think it's all held back by the presence of map 4, which showcases some of the worst level design I've seen in any first-person shooter, even including the ironically bad designs of Down the Drain and Doom 2 in Spain only. It opens up like this: strap in kiddo, it's gonna be a long ride.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
You could perhaps call this a puzzle map in the same sense that opening a safe counts as a puzzle. The puzzles are so convoluted and so stupid, and I ran around and around the map at least 5 times, sometimes finding entire new routes that I didn't even realize existed because there are no landmarks and the whole thing is so fucking expensive, and the routes in and around the place are so difficult to navigate and remember, and some of them have damaging floors, which is not what you want when you walk through for the first time, and by the end of the experience I wasn't even sure if the buttons I was pushing were secrets or actual methods of progression. Some of the buttons that you push do something, many of them apparently don't, but when they do, you're almost never given any indication of what changed, and so begins another stroll around the level to find out what's different. Oh, you didn't know that this button lowers the elevator earlier in the level that you'd only be able to notice if you were sprinting backwards? You are so stupid. The reviewer on the Cacowards page noted that it is one of the few digital spaces in which I can fully lose myself. Touché, I was fully lost the whole time. It's a real shame because I can tell that there's greatness hidden inside here, there's some great ideas and artistry going on, and I think the level is beautiful, but it's all ruined by the stupid button hunting. Then take this example from another level, I push a button and immediately I can see what's changed, and so I go over there and do what I need to do. I don't know if the authors of this WAD are on speaking terms with each other, but if they are, they should definitely get in touch and share some ideas on level design. Just so that you don't totally disregard my dislike of the button hunting in Deadly Standards, I have to pull up Old Still Life next, where I absolutely love the button hunting. It's a puzzle WAD from start to finish, and it shocks you from the beginning with this incredibly thick atmosphere that's foreboding and evil and gives you this sense of helplessness. The author is totally in control, and you're at their mercy every step of the way. The maps are cramped, the gameplay is slow-paced, you spend so much time brooding over the puzzles, and then there are these bursts of frantic fighting that just totally throw you. On the Cacowards page, they say that while Doom is primarily conceived of as a power fantasy, Old Still Life will remind you what it feels like to be doomed. I totally agree with this, and it's a very different and very special sensation. The puzzles are really clever, and I recommend not looking up videos of other people playing, but do make sure your brightness isn't too low, because mine was, and then I missed out an object that I needed for a puzzle, and I had to look at a video of someone else playing to work out what I was supposed to do. Anyway, standout maps for me in this set are 2, 8, and 11. 2 sets the tone for real after the slightly wonky opener, and 8 spawns you into this huge city that is just completely empty. There are no enemies anywhere, just a handful of pistol clips on the ground and a whole lot of locked doors. Eventually, you visit the graveyard and realize there's no way out, and then the mystery slowly unfolds from there. Somehow, Redden of the author has managed to turn getting lost and not knowing where to go into the most exciting part of the gameplay loop. Where other maps frustrate and bore me, Old Still Life puts a grin on my face. It's all part of the plan, and it's fantastic. At the end of the WAD, map 11 shakes things up completely with this huge blue map. The visuals are striking, the map is twice as long as anything before it, and towards the end, you're treated to some good old-fashioned computer gaming puzzles that you might sooner find in a point-and-click adventure game. Once again, don't look at the walkthroughs, you'll get there eventually, and it's totally worth it. On this list, the nearest thing to old still life, but falling pretty far short of its standard, is URE 2020, a short Doom 1 map set geared towards intricate details and shotgun gaming. The first map is especially memorable, dragging you around this extremely cramped oil rig, but over time the cleverness of the opener gives way to more traditional Doom 1 gameplay, the designs get a bit more abstract and minimal, and the set loses a bit of its flair. The shotgun heavy gameplay is a bit perplexing to me. There's barely any ammo for any of the other guns, but you just get shells in spades. If you really like Doom 1 or slower paced and cramped and highly choreographed kind of gameplay, maybe this is for you, otherwise maybe not. As you can very plainly see, this is the best looking WAD in the list of this year. Lullaby starts you off in a dream and you go hoppity hoppity over these blue neon stars, then you fuck up and try again, and then you're dropped off into this enormous fantasy castle and you go down the rabbit hole from there. Every area has a unique style to it, and the author Dan Lex has gone to huge lengths to make all of these weird and wacky shapes that you just do not see in Doom. Make sure you have an up-to-date version of GZ Doom for this WAD, because some of the crazier objects won't render properly if you don't. This is a single map WAD, it's about half an hour long and I believe you can do each of the 3 routes in any order you like, but once you choose one you're stuck with it until it's over. It's all vanilla gameplay, but there is a little bit of a twist. While playing through Lullaby, I sometimes felt like there were just too many enemies in the room, but then it occurred to me that I was basically always at max ammo. The design principle here is give you all the guns, give you all the enemies, and away you go, which sounds heavy-handed and parallels what I said about Arrival, but it's kept very consciously in mind for the design of all the areas of the map. That's just the angle for the WAD, and it makes it feel like a fun and whimsical dream rather than a brooding nightmare like old still life. I cannot fault Lullaby. The visuals are beyond what you expect to be possible from a one-man Doom WAD, and the gameplay is, while not super ambitious, basically perfect. Here's an example of a little detail that I just love. When you start the fight in this room with the holes, you're immediately told what's coming and from where, which is important for this fight because there's revenants coming down the staircase and you're gonna have to navigate some pretty awkward geometry to handle that. And then when you're given your first jump scare trap, Hell Knights in the obvious positions in front of and behind you encourage you to swap out for a rocket launcher, and it probably won't dawn on you immediately that there's a chain gunner up here and that when you kill him, another one spawns in his place, you just got owned. Arceon has a pretty liberal interpretation of the phrase non-linear level design, and the paths are not so much branching as all tangled up like a bowl of spaghetti noodles. There's so many curves and turns in this WAD, and the paths will usually make their way back into each other, leaving you back at an intersection you think you've seen before from a different angle, but you can't really be sure because every area in this map looks exactly the same. Cacodemon spam is another problem in Arceon. It's not super offensive, but it is irritating when it happens. And I feel like the non-linear level design kind of plays into the same problem. Like there isn't a great balance between killing enemies and progressing through the levels when the levels kind of curve back into themselves all of the time. Sometimes you're even given completely free reign of most of the level from the very beginning, and it's hard to know when you should be slowing down to blast monsters and when you should be working out how to continue. Of course, the best option in this kind of situation is to just take it really slow and kill every single enemy one by one, but that slows the gameplay down to a halt, and I feel like that's not really what they're going for in Arceon. The gameplay in this WAD is completely vanilla, it's very old school, and for the most part, it is pretty fun. Arceon does its best when it takes control of the experience and spoon feeds you gameplay pieces instead of letting you roam free in mazes, and there are a handful of set pieces in the WAD that do that. I think it goes to show that there's a good reason for the rule that Arceon loves to break the most. The maps have a lot of personality, they're all memorable, they're also quite long and quite pretty. The visual design isn't as loud or elaborate as something like Lullaby or Time Tripper, but it is well detailed and it does look good. And as is Doom tradition, you'll slowly move from tech base to hell as you go through this one. But yeah, that Arceon is okay. Heartland is a skill saw map set released in the year of our Lord 2021. Well, that's how you know it's good, but I do want to talk about it a little bit more anyway. Heartland is a showcase of the Eternity engine, which from what I understand is a brand new engine which has wacky verticality and moving parts oriented features. But ironically, for a map set and an engine that are ostensibly here to show off verticality, it only comes with a software renderer, which means that it looks like dog shit if you use mouse look and actually try to look up. I don't mind playing without mouse look, but it feels like there's a lot that's being hidden from me just out of sight, and since you go up and down so much in this WAD, it's sometimes easy to disconnect from where exactly you are in the world. Just like in Infraworld Coma Moonlight, I feel like mouse look would be obligatory with a map set like this. I know that it looks great, but I just can't get a very good look at it most of the time. But I do love the look and the feel of Heartland in the Eternity engine, especially the explosions and the sounds. I don't know how much of this is the engine and how much of this is the WAD, because Heartland does come with some custom content. You'll find some familiar faces returning from older WADs, and also some cool new guns and enemies. Early on you get the machine gun and you think, yeah, this is cool, and then a little bit later you get the double machine gun and you realize that you're the fool, actually this is cool. There's also a flamethrower and a cluster bomb rocket launcher kind of thing that you get near the end, and I often felt like it wasn't worth 5 rockets per shot of this thing, but of course it is very fun to use. Heartland is much shorter and it doesn't have as much flair as the big skill saw WADs, but the quality is right up there, and with the Eternity engine at the controls, there's even more going on in the way of creative ideas and set pieces. This is yet another WAD that's pushing the boundaries of what can be done in this game. It's super fresh, it doesn't feel like a rehash of anything I've played before, and above all else, it is at the very top end of quality and polish when it comes to level design. Cydonia is another weird one. I would best describe it as a remix of Plutonia. The idea is that each of the levels loosely resembles something from Plutonia, but reimagined from a gameplay perspective. It's quite impressive how much Cydonia feels like Plutonia, and of course what that means is that there are a lot of chain gunners. Of course, there are other similarities as well. Even the visuals are pretty similar, a little bit modernized but not much. And it feels like Cydonia brings Plutonia into the 21st century, but only a little bit, and this WAD feels like it could easily have been 20 years old. All of the maps in this set are short and snappy. They're a great little challenge from a pistol start, but in a very minimal way. They're not slaughtery at all. Personally, I'm not crazy about Plutonia. I think it's fine, and that's how I feel about Cydonia too. It's fine. If you like Plutonia, you'll like this. 1000 Lines Community Project 3 has a weird name that makes it sound really boring, but actually it is not. If you want to please me, give me tuned up guns, custom enemies, nice environments, and fast, short maps. I think you know where I'm going with this. This 1000 Lines has it all. As you can tell from the title, it's a collab WAD with almost as many authors as there are maps, but the project has been organized so well that it feels totally cohesive, and with the exception of a couple dud maps, you could tell me that this was all made by one person and I'd believe you. As far as duds go, the worst offender in this set is map 25, which spawns you in front of a big locked door with 5 hit scans behind you, and it doesn't get much better from there. But most of the other maps are great, some of them are excellent. All of them are really fast-paced and snappy from the very beginning to the very end, and the authors have this really good sense of space in 1000 Lines. Whether they give you a little or a lot, it's all very deliberate and clearly made with the augmented gameplay in mind. The gimmick of the map set is that every map is restricted to a maximum of 1000 line depths, which are the lines between objects and spaces in Doom. This forces the maps to be short and not overly detailed, but the mappers still manage to create some really captivating environments and exciting level designs. There's plenty of maps in here that don't even look like they've been made under any kind of technical restriction, they just look like great maps. On the flip side of 1,000 Lines, we have Auger Zenith, another collab WAD, but with absolutely no consistency in the quality of the maps. Just taking a look at the first impressions visually, this is map 1, this is map 2, this is map 3, this is map 4. And while all you can really glean from that is the graphics, it's totally representative of the whole experience in Auger Zenith. There are so many custom assets for the squad, and some of the authors make really good use of them, with the first level being the best example of a creation that feels more like a space in a cyberpunk world that's been translated into Doom, rather than a Doom map that's been given a cyberpunk theme. Unfortunately, this is the exception rather than the rule, and the few fleeting moments of greatness in the squad are ruined by a slew of boring dud maps. As with many longer WADs in the list, the quality really tails off in the second half, with this joke map being the first sign that something is going very badly wrong. Bro, they got Microsoft bimbos in this WAD. I remember that from the Anime Land. In Auger Zenith, there are not only dud maps that are boring, but baffling experiences that are insultingly bad and feel like some kind of deliberate waste of my time. It's such a frustrating feeling because I was giddy with excitement when I started this map set and I was expecting to be blown away, but look at this. This is not your opportunity to try out your freaky invuln-fueled spider mastermind fuck-off seizure-inducing fight. This is your opportunity to get me lost in the cyberpunk wonderland and let me blast some demons while I'm there. The really weird thing about this one in particular is that this level, Luminous and Synapse, one of the best examples of what I really want from this WAD, is made by the same author as map 15 with the mastermind fight. I just cannot understand the thought process behind putting this shit into the set. It's really a shame. When Auger Zenith is good, it's great, but it's only great for such a small portion of the experience. Now it is judgment time. 2 out of 10, bitch WAD. And look at this. Once again, it's cool custom guns, cool custom enemies, and cool environments. Infested is a very colorful and Doom cute style map set that has you clearing out gore nests from infested areas in semi-realistic settings. There's only 3 levels, with the mansion and sewer levels being the introduction, and then the tower level being the real meat of the WAD. The main idea here is the Doom 2016 gore nest system, where you enter an area, touch the gore nest, and then all the doors closed and you're locked in a deathmatch arena with enemies that randomly spawn in from the sides. This idea was the worst thing about Doom 2016, and why anyone would want to replicate it in classic Doom is beyond me. Since enemies spawn in randomly from all sides, there's really not much you can do as a mapper to craft the experience, and the idea of level design basically goes out the window. At least in classic Doom, the geometry of the arena means something, unlike in Doom 2016 where every enemy can jump, climb or fly over any obstacle, so there's some gameplay going on. The advantage of this approach is that the environments can look much more real, and the disadvantage is that the arena fights pale in comparison to what the author does in the linear sections of the WAD. It's like playing a randomly generated quest in Skyrim. You know in the back of your mind that you're not getting the real experience, and it feels like an imitation of the real thing. Infested also takes a page out of Deadly Standard's book with an impossibly confusing method of progression that will have you running all over this stupid fucking tower, going up and down staircases and elevators and getting blocked off by God knows what. Once again, some kind of landmark or even just a big fucking arrow telling me what to do would be nice. But despite the shortcomings, the cool guns and cool enemies and cool environments I mentioned carried the experience, and it is beautiful, it is a lot of fun. I just feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity to be something even better. Ashes Afterglow is a post-apocalyptic, narrative-driven total conversion for Doom 2. It's the sequel to Ashes 2063, which I played before Afterglow, and the difference is incredible. It reminds me of Borderlands in that playing the sequel makes the original look like a tech demo. Ashes plays out as an FPS game with light RPG elements. If you've played Strife, it's kind of like that. You talk to people, get information through dialogue trees, keep a journal, buy and sell items, and upgrade your equipment. As you can tell, it's pretty far removed from Doom gameplay. The authors cite a whole list of influences, but for me it feels closer to Half-Life than anything else. Not just because you have a crowbar and go through air vents, but also the pacing, the gunplay, the level design, the way you progress through a seamless world with bits of dialogue here and there. Even the enemy and weapon design mirrors Half-Life to an extent. Afterglow is not only about 6 times longer than the original Ashes, but it also makes much better use of the RPG elements, and it opens up the world somewhat so you don't necessarily have to go to each zone in order. Some areas are semi-optional, some areas can be approached in different ways, and some sections of the storyline play out differently depending on what you decide to do. Once you enter an area, the gameplay is usually more or less linear, but you'll often come across branching paths, and this is where my biggest gripe with Afterglow is, especially in the first half of the game. It's usually not really clear which way is the path, and which leads to a room with some goodies, so there's a lot of second guessing yourself and backtracking and trying to work out where some important item is. There's also lots of secrets, many are very well hidden, and it can be difficult to know if you've actually finished exploring a certain area or not. It's nice to present the player with a choice to go left or right, but when one of those choices is correct and the other is incorrect, the charm is lost. I imagine the thought process here is to introduce some kind of freedom of exploration for the player, but I don't think it works in a game with such linear progression. Exploration seems to be the main angle and appeal of Ashes, especially Afterglow, and when it works, it is so much fun to explore the environments, blasting a couple enemies along the way. The environments are enormous, very realistic by Doom engine standards, and they really feel like places rather than video game levels without sacrificing too much in the way of design quality. Enemies are scarce, and sometimes you'll wander through an area for a really long time just finding more and more and more rooms, and I'm always floored by just how much effort they put into this downtime in the game. Places with no enemies, barely anything to do, just spaces for you to walk through to add to the atmosphere. The result is fantastic. There's really very few FPS games out there that can build an atmosphere the way that Ashes does. I would say it's as good as Half-Life in this regard, and when they do a little bit of light horror, it's even better. I've seen praise for the soundtrack online, but I played this game without music, and I think I made the right decision. This being the only total conversion in the list, it's kind of hard to compare it with the other Cacowards winners. It's so far out of the box, and its only connection to Doom is that it's done in the GZ Doom engine. As far as I can tell, there isn't a single Doom asset used in Ashes, and it's definitely a game in its own right, rather than just a Doom 2 mod. It is a brilliant game, it is hugely impressive, and I think the only major problem with it is that you have to play 2063 first to understand the story.
Brace yourselves, gentlemen. According to the
Opinion.
the
Best WAD in the Cacowards.
lives
Old Still Life.